Hi, I'm Jay Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're really tired, but we're also the hosts of Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, the outs, and the retcons of comics' greatest superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Jay and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
This week, we're looking at the books of November 30th, 2016, and also at a series of announcements of the creative teams on the upcoming X titles.
Or some of them, anyway. So let's jump into, first, that. Okay, so this week is apparently reveal week for the ResurrXion line of X-Men relaunches. Now, as we record this, it's Wednesday night. I suspect by the time this goes up, there will be one or possibly even more additional reveals revealed, but we have no way of knowing. We cannot predict the future.
We should have started a betting pool.
A betting pool?
Yeah.
On what?
On the creative teams.
Oh, well, we have Jean Grey left, and we have Cable, and we have Weapon X.
And those of you inclined to gamble can make your own damn betting pool.
That's right.
Gambling
sorry. We went to Las Vegas for a convention.
How is it only Wednesday?
That's a good question.
We didn't gamble when we were in Las Vegas.
No, that's the point. We just
we just go back to our hotel and sleep. We're just really boring people, Miles.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes. But what's hopefully not going to be boring are these X-Men titles. So, in the rough order in which they were announced, first off, we have X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue, named, of course, after the two squads of the X-Men from the early 90s. And it looks like basically the split is going to be X-Men, as one of our listeners mentioned, I think, on Twitter, X-Men Blue is the Silver Age, and X-Men Gold is the Bronze Age. X-Men Blue is going to be written by Cullen Bunn with art by Jorge Molina, and it's going to be the time-displaced original 5 teenagers. They're going to be back at the Xavier School, which apparently is A, now called the Xavier School, and B, in Central Park for some reason, which is weird, but okay.
Yeah, that seems dubious.
It does. But they're going to be mentored by Magneto. Now, as you know, if you've listened to very much of the podcast of the New Mutants episodes, we really enjoy Headmaster Magneto.
I'm really curious, actually, having read Inhumans vs. X-Men #1, how that's going to play out. That makes that particular combination more intriguing than it would have been last week.
Yeah. Oh, number 0, you mean? Yeah,
Number
totally.
0. The first one.
The first one is number 0.
Oh, my God.
Like in computers. So, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we have Jean back with the other 4 of the original 5. We also have Edie and Evan missing from All New X-Men, where they were with the 4 of the original 5 before.
Yeah, it's basically the original 5 lineup plus Magneto filling in for Professor X. And I've got really mixed feelings about that, because on one hand, I love the original 5 a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I love them together as a lot. I love them as a team a lot. On the other hand, it's 2016, and we've been getting 50 years of stories about the waspiest team ever. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about 2 flagship titles who, between them, have 1 non-white character.
It's unfortunate, and that non-white character is the one of the X-Men who's been around the longest, Storm in X-Men Gold, which we'll get to shortly.
Who's been demoted from leader.
Well, I want to talk about that when we get there. But yeah, and it's unfortunate. I mean, on the one hand, we have certainly a more diverse cast in Generation X, which we'll talk about shortly.
Yes.
But Generation X doesn't
have
X-Men in the title.
Yeah.
And books that have X-Men in the title are going to be the center of the line. And I think in a book about mutants and what they represent, that shouldn't be the case. That said, like you said, the original 5 X-Men are awesome together, the time-displaced ones especially so.
I'm happy that this book exists. I'm not happy that it's half of the core lineup.
Yes, I would agree with that. So the other half of the core lineup, that is X-Men Gold, that one's written by Mark Guggenheim with art by Ardian Syaf. I'm sure I'm mangling that pronunciation, or maybe it was Adrian and it was a typo in my source. Hard to say. But that one's going to be Kitty Pryde as the leader of the team, like you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Rachel Gray, who's apparently now called Prestige and has sort of a new concept to her and a cape. She's got a cape now.
No, Miles, she's printed on shiny paper.
Oh, okay. Prestige format.
And bound slightly differently.
That sounds about right.
It's really primarily a cosmetic difference.
Mm-hmm. Hence the mask.
Yeah.
Anyway, and we also have Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Old Man Logan. So this is a very classic, all-new, all-different lineup.
Why is Old Man Logan doing stuff?
I like Old Man Logan.
I don't like him on times. He's... Okay, the fact that he's on a team and we haven't seen Laura yet...
Well,
I'm side-eyeing real hard here.
That's legit. Hopefully we're going to see Laura maybe in Weapon X, or Tom Taylor has alluded that he's got plans for her in the future. Maybe she's got a series still that we haven't heard of. Hard to say.
I feel like if you're going to make her Wolverine and you're going to make her stick as Wolverine, do it. Go all the way. Make her Wolverine. Give her like 7 ongoings.
There we go. Perfect.
I'd read them.
So, yes. And we don't know a lot about this book. We do know that Kitty is stepping up to a leadership role, and the Storm was the one that recommended she do so.
Interesting.
Which I'm okay with. I mean, Kitty's been a central enough character to the X-Men for long enough, and she's grown up enough. And there needs to be enough change, both in the line and sort of in what the characters are doing, that, okay.
I could also see Storm deciding either that she wanted to take a more diplomatic role, the X-Men and the mutant community, or, which is something we saw her step into more in Death of X, I think.
Yeah.
Or basically decide that she wants more freedom to do other stuff. She wants the Wolverine package.
She wants the Wolverine package.
Oh,
you heard it
no,
here first.
Damn it!
Continue.
We already established that canonically.
Oh, that's true. That's just canon.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, and there's we have a
Anyway,
cat apparently too. Hi, Bella.
the cat package. I still think we should make her a Tiny Jonathan style mask.
If only.
She would never wear it. She's really high right now. She just got her teeth cleaned.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
But yeah, so that's X-Men Gold. So those are our 2 flagship books. And I mean, I think the idea of having an 05 focused book and a sort of slightly more recent characters focused book, it's not a bad concept.
It is basically the Silver Age and the Bronze Age, though.
It is. It's very old school. It kind of reminds me of some of what DC did with Rebirth, where they're like, hey, this is the stuff people think fondly upon. Let's just go back to it. It's got its pluses and its minuses, and one of the minuses, like you mentioned, is back in the day, the teams were a lot wider, and that's a little unfortunate.
Well, and there's such limited... playing on nostalgia is basically a really good way to make sure to not invest in the future, to keep the line from growing. I think both of I think both of these books are going to be good. They're both books I want to see. I'm just really dubious about them as the center of the X-Men line, because this is a line that's thrived on dynamism. And it's thrived on character development, and it's thrived on, well, less than it should have, but diversity. It's been the center of a lot of conversations about that. It's a huge jumping on point for new readers, and it's a huge jumping on point for readers who feel alienated by a lot of mainstream superhero comics. And I think those are strengths that they should be more actively playing to. I suspect strongly that the breakout book of this batch is going to be Generation X.
Well, let's go ahead and skip to that one, and we'll talk about Iceman after. So,
Sure.
Generation X is going to be written by Christina Strain, who used to be a colorist, actually.
She might still be doing some.
Oh, yes, it could be doing both.
She's a really good colorist. I'm really excited about this book, by the way. She did an interview at Comic Book Resources, and it's basically everything I want to hear from an X-Men writer who's going to be doing a school book.
Right, and the art is by Amilcar Pina. Again, I'm sure I'm mangling the pronunciation. And yeah, like you said, this is a school book. We've been missing a school book for a little while now. I'm glad we have it again. And this one, I guess the premise is that we have the young mutants who are going to be moving into superheroing, and the ones that are going to be moving into diplomacy. And these are the other ones. Basically, it's like the special class from Grant Morrison's run.
Well, and with some overlap, we've got Quentin Quire back.
Right, exactly. So we have as their mentor Jubilee. You know, she was in the original Generation X book, and she kind of is the kid that's growing up a bit.
Yeah, and she's the kid who grew up separate from the big mutant career paths. I mean, she went, full scale, jumped ship and became a vampire. So.
It's true, she did after losing her powers.
Yeah.
And the special class in this case are Quentin Quire, like you said, Benjamin Deeds from Bendis' Uncanny Run.
I'm so glad he's going to be a central character. He's interesting, cool. And Christina's take on him is so interesting.
Yeah, and the one issue that focused on him and Emma Frost by Bendis is
one of the best of that run.
It was one of the best of the run, yeah. We have Bling, who I've always had a soft spot for. We have
Bling, which means that one of the front and central characters, literally the front and center character on the promo image, is queer.
And black as well.
And black, yeah, that's huge.
Although she looks rockier, but still.
Still, that's a really big deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then we have iBoy, Nature Girl, and a new character named Hindsight. So this is interesting. I mean, as much as I was hoping for a book that was somehow a New Mutants revival and a Generation X revival, this makes sense, I think, for the modern era as the kids' book that we get. The book about kids, rather.
I'm really excited about this. Again, I read Strain's interview at CBR, and she hit all of the notes that I hope to see from a writer tackling a book like this, which is a lot of affection for the old material without reverence for it. She was a huge, she mentioned she's a huge fan of the original Generation X.
And of Runaways, one of my favorite
books. And of Runaways. She colored Runaways.
Yes.
Yeah, and, but at the same time, she's very, very irreverent in her approach to it. And she's bringing a really fresh voice and a fresh lineup of kids. Like, this is again how I feel like superhero comics should evolve. The ways in which it's rooted in the previous material are tonal. they're affectionate, they're continuity, they're not just rehashes. So this book is in a lot of ways what I want to see out of the line and what I want to see the line grow into.
Speaking of things we want to see, I'm super psyched about the Iceman ongoing now that we've got some details about it.
Yes. Oh man, this is another one with a really great team. I'm focusing so much on writers, but the writers, I'm so excited about so many of the writers on here. Like the artists are all really good, but the writers are the ones who are setting off fireworks for me. And this one is Sina Grace.
And art's going to be by Alessandro Vitti. And
who is fantastic and who's going to be such a good fit for this.
And so the mystery has been revealed. This book is going to be about the elder Iceman.
Yes!
Not that he's that old, just, older than the younger
The
one.
adult Iceman, but specifically the adult Iceman who likewise just came out as an adult.
Right.
And navigating that space.
And apparently that's going to be a focus of the book, is Iceman dealing with his sexuality. And I feel good about that because so often mutancy is a metaphor for whatever type of minority status, the writer's referring to. But as you, Jay, have mentioned so many times, intersectionality is hugely important with this sort of thing. Like, you can have mutancy instead of being gay or whatever. You should have it as another thing alongside it. And that's exactly what we're going to have here, which I'm super excited. Iceman's always been a favorite character of mine ever since Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. So seeing him with some time in the spotlight, I'm totally down with that.
Yeah, this is by the way, a book that I was really nervous about until, again, I saw the folks involved. I think everything that Sina Grace has said about what he wants to do on the book, everything that Daniel Ketchum, who's the X-Line editor, has mentioned, I'm still a little nervous about it because it feels really high stakes.
Yeah, true.
But I feel like at least this way, I think making sure that the book had a gay writer was a really, really good decision and a really important one. And it relieves a lot of my concern about it because I feel like no matter what direction it ends up taking, it won't be someone else trying to tell that story.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we do still have some more books to be announced. We have Cable, we have Jean Grey, and we have Weapon X. So we'll see what all those look like. I'm especially interested to see what's going to go on with Jean Grey since the young Jean, the only alive Jean at the moment, is the leader of her own team.
That doesn't mean she can't have a solo series again. Wolverine. Oh,
totally. I'm just saying it's a pleasant surprise in that regard. It's not something I would have expected. So we'll see. Like I said, we'll probably have at least one more announcement by the time this video goes live. Curious to hear what everybody thinks. Let us know in the comments. And now let's talk about this week's comics.
First up is Inhumans vs. X-Men #0, written by Charles Soule with art by Kenneth Rocafort and colors by Dan Brown. I was really nervous about this, and it was by far and away my favorite book this week. It was so good. It was so solid.
I mean, we talked a lot when we reviewed Death of X #4 about how the noodle incident doesn't really make any sense. We have everyone reacting to what Cyclops did like he was actually outright compared to Hitler at one point. Yeah, and what he did was actually kind of like mostly fine.
And basically humanitarian.
Right. I mean, I can see the Inhumans being pissed off, but not
But
the
Inhumans are dicks.
Kind of.
If there's a takeaway from the series, it's that the Inhumans, or from this issue, it's that the Inhumans are dicks, and also that Kenneth Rocafort and Dan Brown are an unstoppable and amazing combination of artistic fusion and brilliance. What I'm most excited about though is who the central one of the two central characters of this series is. And it's someone we haven't seen in a really long time in a central role and didn't until Death of X, and that is Emma Frost.
This is the most interesting Emma Frost has been, in my opinion, since Grant Morrison's run, since he made her a central character.
Yeah, when we talked to Charles Soule on the podcast, he mentioned that he really loves Emma Frost. And it really comes through in this book, and his version of it is very much sort of my Emma.
Yeah. Well, and she's also in a situation we've never seen her in before. So I should go ahead and say, if you haven't read Death of X #4 by now, we are going to talk about what happened in it because you can't talk about this issue without doing so.
Yeah. Cyclops died, but she also faked his death.
Right. And
slightly
now,
complicated.
What we're seeing is it being unclear whether or not she understands that that's what happened. Like
or
whether
how much she's convinced herself otherwise. I don't think that's true. I think she's just putting on that face in front of other people.
Could be.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's Emma who's not really... I mean, she's certainly dedicated, and she is firing on all cylinders and going forward as hard as she can.
But she's also really utterly devastated. And I think the comparison to... Well, you compared it to Morrison, but there's... Actually, no, Morrison is a good basis for comparison. I'm thinking after the destruction of Genosha.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That level of shell shock and resolve at the same time.
Mm-hmm. The other central character, is Beast. It's interesting to me that our two main characters in this book are both mutants. They're both a current X-Man and a former X-Man.
Because ultimately, I think this is, at least so far, a book about mutants. We've seen we've seen the Inhumans stuff kind of largely from the Inhumans perspective. The Inhumans have been much more central in the line, in the Marvel lineup than mutants and the X-Men have been lately. And this is the series that's bringing the X-Books, that's kind of bringing the X-Books back. That's a bridge to them taking up a bigger part of the universe. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense to me. Also, the Inhumans are kind of dicks. They
do not come off well in this issue.
That's something that I have trouble with. If this is actually being set up to be what it is, I went in wanting to root for everybody. Mm-hmm. I went in wanting this to be an interesting story about two sides whose perspectives I could both really understand. And I came out just being like, nah, screw those Inhumans. Screw them.
Kind of feeling the same way. And part of that is that, Beast, who's the representative in some ways on the Inhuman side, part of the issue is about him realizing that maybe he's chosen the wrong side, or at least maybe he shouldn't have chosen sides.
The Inhumans' willingness to blithely suggest basically erasing the X gene of every mutant.
Yeah, that's like early on in the issue, and it's just
we've been down that path. We've discussed that concept a lot of times, and it's not an okay thing.
And then we also have the plot point being set up of Beast having essentially created a mini Cerebro for the Inhumans, initially to save mutants from the oncoming Terrigen Cloud, which they're trying to do, to their credit. But I suspect that might not go well.
Yeah, Beast is a character who is, I think, in some ways long due for a reckoning.
Well, he kind of got one at the, what was it?
It was 600, Uncanny 600.
Oh, it was 600? Okay.
Yeah, and that was less a reckoning than a failed intervention.
Right. But I'm curious where he's going to end up after all of this.
Me too.
Definitely. We haven't seen him on any of the Inhuman or X-Men lineups so far, so... But yeah, so those are our characters. What about the art?
The art is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I love the art. I love the way Rocafort and Brown, and it's impossible to separate them because the art is so much a product of the two of them working in collaboration.
I thought you meant they were just inseparable, like they would just get really upset if you tried to pull them apart, like two small child friends. Like
the Maximoff kittens.
Oh yeah, like the Maximoff kittens.
I also like the canonical Maximoffs, but the Maximoff kittens, if Wanda's out of the room, Pietro will wander around and yowl. Mm-hmm. It's really cute.
So you heard it here first. The art team of IVX are best friends, and we'll hear nothing else.
I was thinking that that was like some kind of Voltron thing.
Oh, maybe. Oh.
But either way, they're doing a very good job.
We're tired.
Yeah. Oh, the cat's asleep on you.
Yeah, she is. Her head's resting on my hand.
Either way, they're doing an amazing job. This book is gorgeous, and the way the two of them, so one of the bases on which I judge artists is how they do Emma Frost's diamond form. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is maybe the coolest it's ever looked.
It looks good. Now, there's one scene where she cries, and there's a single, like, carefully Shane Company cut diamond that falls as a tear. No, but the rest of it is cool, and especially seeing what she's doing with that, like pushing herself harder and harder, getting into more and more dangerous situations so she can utilize it better. Well,
specifically, how many Cyclops traits she's picked up.
God, I know.
There is a panel on like the second or third page where she's literally walking away and telling people, "I'm fine."
Yeah, it's Charles Soule is just killing it with Emma right
everyone,
now.
The whole team is killing it. This book is so good. This book is I feel weird being this surprised that the book is this good, but I feel like after Extraordinary in particular, I no longer trust the I like every creator and the concept on this book, so it must be good formula.
Harsh but true.
It should have been so much better. But this one it works. This one is stellar, and if it continues this strong, This is the current series that I am most excited about pretty easily.
Next up is Extraordinary X-Men number 16, written by Jeff Lemire, with art by Victor Ibanez, and colors by J. David Ramos. So this is basically the climax of, well, everything that's been going on. The thing with Sapna and the World Eater, the thing with Colossus, all of that stuff. And to the book's credit, it's very tense. Like, this is clearly a bunch of climactic stuff all going on, and the book cutting back and forth between all these scenes really certainly amps up the pace and makes you share the tension of the characters. At the same time, though, I found I had a little trouble being invested in what was going on, which is unfortunate, because I really wanted to be. I was having the emotional reaction that the book, I think, intended in the immediate sense, but there wasn't the larger context to really anchor that and make it more meaningful.
You know what it felt like? So, you know the inevitable scene, big melee fight, like the second or third movie of a trilogy. We've gotten really invested in the characters, and everything's high stakes, and then there's this slow motion battle scene, and all of these characters you've sort of gotten to know die, and there's some kind of like really beautiful music, probably from the string section, maybe bagpipes or something like that. Everything's slow motion and sort of almost gauzy. This felt like that, but like it hadn't earned the emotional impact, so it was just sort of there.
Kind of, yeah. Like, it had all the trappings of exactly what it should have been.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is that, like, we haven't really had, with a couple of exceptions, there have been a couple issues that did do this, but in this series, we haven't had much time to get to know the character's dynamic.
Yeah.
We haven't had much time to get to know X-Haven, the Jean Grey school set in Limbo, as a place. Like, it doesn't have much of a sense of character, nor do many of the characters themselves.
Yeah, this is a large cast, and it's a cast that's been scattered enough that we haven't gotten time or much chance to establish dynamics. We've just gotten glimpses of them, and those
glimpses were really good. I mean, we've had a couple of very positive Extraordinary X-Men reviews.
But they're not enough to really provide foundation for the big emotional moments in this issue. There's just not enough.
That said, we should talk about them. And again, because it's hard to talk about the plot without doing so, spoiler, goggles on.
I liked the hugs.
There were some good hugs. There were definitely some good hugs.
There was that good hug that was, I think, very specifically a callback to another really good hug.
Which
from
one?
Years before. The one with Colossus and Nightcrawler.
Oh.
To the one where Cyclops and Beast run into each other in the X-Mansion when each of them thinks that the other is dead.
That's a hell of a deep cut. That was like in the 70s.
Yeah, but it's the same, like... It's the same Dirty Dancing pose.
Yes, well. But anyway, so we have, Sapna, who's possessed by the World Eater, attacking X-Haven. We have Apocalypse saying, hey, I'll free Colossus and he can go join this fight, but you have to let me go. And Nightcrawler agrees, yes, we'll let you go to free Colossus. And then
dumps him in a pit.
And dumps him in a pit.
Or a big maelstrom in Limbo.
And more on that in a moment.
It's lovely.
But the sacrifice, Colossus getting restored, doesn't actually turn the fight around, and Magic is forced to kill Sapna. And that was weird.
That was weird. Magic is the character who I'm most invested in this book, who I think is being written most with the most teeth, as it were.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Sapna's technically got the most teeth at this point.
Well, with all the demony stuff.
A lot of teeth. But yeah, Magic's got the most emotional weight, and those panels in that bit that was powerful. Victor Ibanez's art is great, but can't carry enough on its own.
Yeah. I do, what you were saying a moment ago, I do enjoy this version of Kurt. I wasn't quite so sure at the beginning of the series when Nightcrawler was basically almost comatose and super traumatized by stuff that he probably should have been able to get over.
Well, there wasn't much to see when he was almost comatose, but when we started to see him come back. I like this sort of Nightcrawler with more of an edge, but still with a good heart, because like if you look at almost all the alternate reality versions of Nightcrawler, it's always him just going over the line to be cruel and manipulative and evil. And with this, we see that darkness, but he's still the Kurt Wagner we know and love. He's still the one who makes these dark sacrifices where he betrays Colossus. Everything he does for the right reasons. He's never he's not always good, but he's never cruel.
Yeah, and what he does in this is for the sake of his friendship with his best friend Colossus, and I buy that. So I dig that, and I do want to give the creative team, and Lemire especially, credit for writing an interesting, compelling, different Kurt Wagner.
Again, a lot of characters are being written well. It's just that their time is their time in the spotlight, their time in the focus is so fleeting.
Agreed. Another thing that happens at the end is X-Haven not really being a thing anymore. Storm decides to bring the X-Mansion back into the real world outside of Limbo, which I gotta say, about time. I never really liked that as a plot line, and it also just seemed kind of unwise.
I think it was one of the biggest structural weaknesses of the book. Mm-hmm. I think it short-circuited a lot of story opportunities. This is a series that frustrates me because it's felt like it was treading water, and now it still feels like it's treading water. It just sort of, and I don't want that. I want, even if there's a series that's not fundamental, that's not central to the line, that you don't need to follow the ongoing plot, I want there to be a compelling reason to follow it other than that it's there. Mm-hmm. And this never quite gave us one. Finally, we've got Old Man Logan number 14, written by Jeff Lemire with art by Felipe Andrade and colors by Jordi Belair. Old Man Logan got fun!
It kind of did. There were monster people.
There were monster people. There were Draculas. This is the Old Man Logan versus Dracula arc. Mm-hmm. I am so happy. I'm so happy.
Now, we do know that Wolverine, if he tries to get vampirized, like, it works out okay, but this is Old Man Logan, so maybe it's different. I
don't even care. He's fighting Dracula. Also, man, Andrade and Belair.
Yeah, now I first found Felipe Andrade's art in Captain Marvel. There was a lengthy run, I think, in volume 1.
I think he's a better fit on this book, and he's a really good transition from Sorrentino.
Yeah, very, very different style. This feels like a different book at this point.
But it's organic enough and close enough in feel to not seem like, I don't feel like we have stylistic whiplash here.
Yeah, I would agree.
And, it's a cartoonier art style for a much cartoonier story, which I found absolutely delightful. It explores Logan's relationship with a character who's very important to him, who we haven't really seen him interact with much yet.
Jubilee, yeah.
Who, of course, is also a vampire. Mm-hmm. And then he goes to Transylvania and attacks Dracula's castle. And... Well,
with the Howling Commandos.
Yes! Who are all monster people!
Yeah. And also Man-Thing. I love Man-Thing. He's fun.
Yes. Oh, God. I just really enjoyed this. It's got some emotional heft, but mostly it's just fun. It feels like all new Wolverine.
That actually is what it reminded me of, because one of the criticisms that we've levied toward Old Man Logan is that it's been sort of a one-trick pony, Mm-hmm. It's all about let's cut back and forth through time and have Logan learn to accept that he cannot fix his own future, but maybe he can change this one, the future isn't set in stone, etc., etc. Whereas All New Wolverine was switching genres like every couple issues for a while.
But keeping its feel consistent, and it was walking the line of the really funny and the really intensely serious and tragic really beautifully. Mm-hmm. And yeah, this is a really good issue, and it's a fun issue, and this is the first time in a while that I've read an issue of Old Man Logan and gone, I can't wait to read the next one.
I think you may have liked it a little more than I did. To me, it felt a little too slight, especially given the sort of the weight that I'm used to getting from Old Man Logan as a book. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing. I think I just wasn't expecting the issue to be like it was.
I like it. I think there's a lot to be said for creative teams who are willing to break from set precedent. Mm-hmm. And I would rather see those experiments happen, even if they don't end up quite sticking their landing. So that's 3 out of 3, plus a whole slew of upcoming titles. What's our pick of the week?
Our pick of the week is definitely Inhumans vs. X-Men number 0, which I gotta say, I wasn't expecting to like either Inhumans vs. X-Men or a 0 issue this much, but it was solid. I mean, we talked a lot about why, it feels like it has stakes, the characters are written in a fascinating fashion, the art is truly stellar, we're excited to see what happens next. If we could get events like this all the time, I would be a happy comics reader indeed. As it is, this comic itself is making me one. What's our panel of the week?
Our panel of the week is from Old Man Logan number 14. Sometimes we choose panels based on, dynamic layouts. Sometimes we choose them based on effective storytelling. Sometimes we choose them just because we like them, and this is one of those. Mm-hmm. So here is a picture of Cerebra holding a baby.
That's it for this week. Thanks for watching.
If you like what you've seen here, but would vastly prefer it without our faces, check out the podcast, Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up every Sunday at explainthexmen.com, also on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. What have we got for them this week?
This week we are getting to the infamous Psylocke Becomes a Ninja arc during the perhaps less famous There Aren't Any X-Men period.
And for that episode, we are joined by guest expert Sarah Kuhn, who's coming in to talk to us about the racial politics of Psylocke. It's a long and complicated subject, and one that I'm really excited to be discussing, especially with Sarah, who's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
That podcast, these video reviews, and everything at explaintheXmen.com are brought to you...
This cat.
No, not the cat. The cat came on her own steam. But that podcast, these video reviews, and everything at explaintheXmen.com are brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. We are an entirely listener-supported podcast, and those are the folks who let us stay on the air and ad-free and let us keep making cool stuff. If you want to join their ranks, which you absolutely should, you can do that at the link either above or below this video, depending on where you're watching it.
In the meantime, keep an eye out for more ResurrXion reveals, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.
So here's what I don't get. Number 0 is the first issue of the series.
Right.
It's not separate from the series.
I mean, in theory, you could, like, not read it because it's just set up, but I kind of feel like
no,
you
but if you subscribe to the series, you get number 0. Why not just number it 1 and put a little text box that says prologue in the first panel?
I don't know. I mean, you remember back in the 90s when they had that series of -1 issues?
And then they didn't do zeros, and it made me even angrier.
Well, so I think some of the series might have had series. I don't know. But yeah, like they would show, things from the characters' backstories.
I only actually remember one of those, which is the Havoc one, about his horrible, depressing childhood.
Oh, right. Havoc was raised by a potato.
Havoc was not raised by a potato.